The economy of Kenya is projected to be around $131 billion by end of this year. That means it's allowed 60.9 trillion, thereabout. The debt in Kenya is 12.5 trillion now. So when we talk about debt to GDP ratio, we must never massage the denominator. Because you can just take your calculator now, tell me 12.5 divided by 16.9, whether it is 64% as presented. It is actually over 70% debt to GDP ratio. So it is important to, as Kenya, we be very factual with our data, so that when we report figures that has GDP in it, we don't massage GDP, either inflate it or whatever, to give us the right parameters that we need. Let me go back to my presentation. In 2003, when President Kibaki took over, the debt in Kenya was 600 billion Kenya shillings. 600 billion Kenya shillings when President Kibaki took over. By the time he left, it was around 1.8 trillion Kenya shillings. And therefore, President Kibaki borrowed roughly, because there are some decimal points, around 1.2 trillion Kenya shillings for the entire 10 years he was president. And therefore, he was borrowing around 120 billion it's actually 100 billion every year. When President Uhuru Kenyatta took over, the debt was 1.8 trillion. In 2022, the public debt in Kenya was 8.7 trillion Kenya shillings. And therefore, he borrowed around, we can say 7 trillion. So in every year, he was borrowing roughly 700 billion shillings. There is a reason I'm giving these figures. The current administration, when it took over, the debt was 8.7 trillion Kenya shillings. Now, as we talk with you today, the legal debts, because there are others which I'll talk about, the legal debt is 12.5 trillion Kenya shillings. And therefore, in that span of less than 3 years, Kenya has borrowed 3.8 trillion Kenya shillings. And therefore, Kenya is borrowing 1.25 trillion Kenya shillings every year. And therefore, the money Kibaki borrowed in 10 years, we are borrowing every year. And therefore, every day, we are borrowing 3.5 billion shillings every day. So this conference will be here for a week. So by the time you go back to Nairobi, you can do the calculations. That is the legal debt. Those who follow politics of Africa, you must have followed the politics of Senegal last year, where two gentlemen, that is Diomaye Faye and Osman Sonko, they are currently the president and the prime minister respectively, were actually had been locked in by government then. They campaigned for only 10 days and won. Only 10 days. Because people were fed up that time. Upon assuming office in Senegal last year, they realized that the government of President Macky Sall in Senegal had borrowed between 7 to 13 billion US dollars of the book. What is of the book? There is a register the DG in the National Treasury is referring to. That is the one when you go to the Central Bank of Kenya and all the government data, you'll get to see how much is the debt in Kenya. That was the same book they thought was legitimate in Senegal then. Upon assuming office, they realized there were some debts baptized in other names. You can call it securitization, you can call it revenue-backed board, you can call it asset-backed board. In Kenya, they have names. One is called securitization of road maintenance levy fund. The other one is called Talanta Board. The other one is many others. So they realized there was 13 billion US dollars borrowed off the book. As we talk today, the duo that was very popular in Senegal last year, Just wait in the next few months. Actually, issues have already started. Why? Because it is important for a country to maintain one book of debt. And I've been talking about this issue because of the enormity of its importance. Kenya must stop borrowing off the book. Beyond the reported debt of 12.5 trillion, Kenya has already borrowed an illegal debt of 175 billion shillings, where they have gone to the banks, taken a loan of 175 billion, and then they are telling the banks they'll be collecting the fuel levy for the next 7 years. And I'm here wondering, the people in the National Treasury and in government, if you came in to lead and you realize that all the revenue had been securitized, then you'd be elected to do what? So that's one. Second is called Talanta Board. The Talanta Stadium you see, the cost is 45 billion in present value. But it is important for Kenyans to know that Kenya actually took a loan of the book of 45 billion shillings. And do you know what? Now, we'll be servicing that debt using sports fund. Every month, 500 million shillings. In 15 years, a debt of 45 billion shillings, Kenya will pay an interest rate of 100 billion Kenya shillings. And therefore, the cost of the Talanta Stadium in Nairobi, the one you see on Gong Road, is not 45 billion. It is the most expensive stadium in the world. It will be 145 billion in the next 15 years. So I've been requesting the people who are dealing with our debt, no one anakuzuia kukopa, but please let us maintain, as we have done in the past, only one book of debt. And this issue, again, was just discovered in Kenya last year. Actually this year, 2025, since independence, we have never done securitization. We have never done those kind of boards. It is important that when we get a squeeze on the normal borrowing, let us not expose Kenya by opening other secret, illegal books of loans. Why are you talking now? I am talking about it now because even then, when I was talking with the reports, even the reports of the budget committee then indicate we were totally against illegal debts. And none of the illegal debts were taken when I was chairman of budget. Zero securitization, zero illegal boards, zero secret loans, because it was wrong, it is still wrong. There is a brother of mine who asked, what did you do that is, when you were budget chair, that's making capitation to be cut? Capitation was not cut when I was chairman of budget. It was being cut, it is being cut now. And I can assure you, me, sijipigi kifua, there are things I was putting forward when we were making the budget. The current JSS interns who are confirmed, 46,000 of them, very few people were for that confirmation. Because they were saying, they are the same people who are in the streets. I said precisely the point. They are in the streets because they don't have money. So I have been a champion of education, and that is why even now, I feel very bad that the government is adding school fees for day scholars. And as my closing remark, I can assure you, as MP for Kiharu, we are not going to allow the government to add the burdens to the parents of day scholars. They can get the money from any other place, from any other vote, but you are not going to allow the government to annihilate free basic education. If there is an assurance I can give you, it is that one. Whatever it takes, capitation can only go up, it cannot come down. And therefore we cannot shift the burden to the parents. Thank you very much. May God bless you.
Thank you, Honorable Ndindi.